It's very irritating, isn't it? Because you've got your list of things to do, and they are not in the agenda. We are uninterruptible. And a lot of times it's not necessarily that we don't want to help, it's just that we have stuffed our lives with so many things to do, there's no room for people. There's no room for anything else. You probably remember that when Jesus spoke with the woman at the well in John 4, there's an interesting detail in John 4:4. It says he had to pass through Samaria. As far as I can tell from Scripture, that woman at the well was not on the itinerary. The disciples were getting food. Jesus was there interested in getting some water. But he stopped. He had some time. He had some wiggle room, or a margin is how some people describe it. He was not rushing from one thing to the other. Same with Zacchaeus in Luke 19. It says, and he entered and was passing through Jericho. Luke 19:1. Jesus was, he had things to do, but he always could stop and say, what do you need one-on-one from me? They were not on his list of things to do. The person standing in front of him was an opportunity. I've seen that in my life as a teacher. I remember one day I got so caught up in trying to get the grades and do the planning and things like that, and then a student would come up and have a question or want to talk, and in my mind I'm thinking, would you leave me alone? I'm trying to teach you. If teaching would be easy if it wasn't for the kids. And I realize the silliness of that is I'm under the illusion that I'm going to get caught up and get all organized. But that's a very, very important question to ask all of ourselves. Are you interruptible? Especially when it comes to family, and those relationships, and especially parents and children. We'll be talking about that. We need to live lives that can be interrupted, and it leaves room for responding for the opportunities that God will send you. And it would be a shame if you miss them because you're just flying by and missing these opportunities. Some of the most important things you'll be a part of, some of the most important conversations you'll ever be involved with were not on your calendar. You know that. You were the one who benefited from that. Your own self. People who are older or in a different position than you took the time to talk to you. We need to be that person for other people. You can't fill your life to the extent that you are not interruptible. Another good example is Matthew 5:41. Remember Jesus talked about the second mile? Talk about inconvenient. You probably know this was somebody who was forcing somebody to stop their schedule and carry a burden that was not theirs for a mile out of their way. He says, I want you to go 2. So if there was any support for this idea of being available to people, that seems to be pretty significant. We all need a serious overhaul of our schedules. I bet, and if we took the time, just about everybody in this room has the week laid out before them, this landscape of hectic schedules and appointments, and you'll be lucky to get even half of it done. And just tomorrow, I can imagine you're going to hit the ground running if you're like most people. But we have to have time for people. There's a big issue as far as this is concerned, in particular, again, for a Christian, because we are created to serve. It's one of the defining distinctions of a Christian. A Christian serves people. Not money, not schedule. It's about other people. Strangely enough, research is discovering things that we should already know from having read our Bibles, that it's actually physically better for you to serve other people. There's a book, interestingly enough, called Why Do Good Things Happen to Good People? It is physically good for you. It's called a giver's high or things like that. They're finding all kinds of things. It's almost as if you were made for it. But God created us to be servants. But one of the hugest barriers is our own selfishness. Philippians 2 deals with this. Philippians 2 verse 3. And I include me and everybody. This is just human nature. We are basically constantly, continually selfish. It takes a Herculean effort to stop thinking about ourselves even for a few minutes. That's why a lot of people are sad. I think that's the recipe. That's how you become unhappy with life, is focus on yourself. And the opposite is true as well. Philippians 2 verse 3 says, do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but in humility of mind, let each of you regard one another as more important than himself. Do not merely look out for your own personal interest, but also for the interests of others. This is not just a nice thought for the day. Hey, we should be nice to other people and serve other people. It's essential. You will never be happy because you're designed to serve other people. If you're not serving others at any point, if you're totally wrapped up in yourself, as far as living life, you're doing it wrong. And a lot of the things that you don't like about your life, you might be surprised how quickly those things are repaired and made complete by simply taking the time to help other people and not being focused on yourself. And I include myself in that. God expects us to be available for the needs of others. We're told you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, with all your mind, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Our current way of life makes that really, really difficult. It interferes. Serving others, by the way, it makes life a little more interesting. And I bet you, I know everybody here has had the opportunity and followed through with it. There was a woman who saw a group of older ladies. They were counting out to pay for this buffet, and they were counting out their bill and change. And this woman went over there. She noticed it, went over and paid their bill, and it just made their day that this other woman would step forward and do that. There was another woman who had baked a pie, and she was having a bunch of people over, very busy, because, kind of like Martha, very, very busy. People are coming over, and she didn't have any whipped cream. So she went to the local convenience store and got to talking to the guy behind the register, and he says, oh, so what's this for? He says, well, I made a pie for some friends coming over, and, cherry pie. He says, oh, I love cherry pie. That sounds good. And she went home in the midst of her busy day, cut a piece of pie, put some whipped cream on it, and drove it back for this guy at the register. That's got to make a mark, some kind of positive thing. My sister, I'm going to bring her up more than once because she's really good at this. She was driving home one day and saw a new family moving into a house. She drove home, and she's one of the busiest people I know, drove home, got her 2 sons, big guys, and brought them over and helped this family move in. It was an opportunity. I would have driven by, not even noticed them, because we're so in a hurry to get across other things. And I'm sure you're well aware of these opportunities. It makes life more interesting. You may have heard about, there was a Starbucks, and it happens once in a while. I don't know if it's happened out here. This guy pulled up to the drive-thru, and the guy said, it's covered. The guy in front of you paid for yours. And that really threw him. He said, well, okay, I'll pay for the guy behind me. Next guy pulled up, and he thought that was pretty good, so he paid for the guy behind him. It went all day long, because they liked the idea. The trick is to not get in front of like a van load of soccer players or something like that. So you have to be careful, but it's kind of fun. It makes life a little more interesting. Makes life a little more interesting when you're focused on other people. Matthew 16:24, and I know you've heard this verse 1,000 times, but I think we missed something here in Matthew 16, verse 24. Jesus is talking to those who are considering following him, and he says, this is what it's going to take. This is what defines a Christian. If anyone wishes to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Denying yourself, that means approaching you and saying no. It's saying no to you. This is what I want, and you're saying no because I'm going to do this for other people. We just got a few minutes. I want to talk about just a couple other things. We'll start wrapping this up. I think we got about 10 minutes. One factor that all of us need to deal with is work. Whether you're at school or maintaining the home, we're all working. And it's good for us. Work's not necessarily bad. I believe that we're designed to use our creativity and our talents to do that, but a lot of times we're too busy. Japan is notoriously, they're way beyond us. There's some countries that are a little bit less stressed than we are and some that are more. There's actually a Japanese word for busy, and it's the sign of a heart with a line crossed through it. They have a term called Karoshi, where people are dying from being overworked. They even did a documentary on a man who was on the phone with his job, and he just dropped, and that was the end of him. It was just too much stress. In 1956, Richard Nixon told the Americans of our country, in the near future, prepare for a 4-day week. U.S. Senate subcommittee in 2000 said that we will soon be working 14-hour weeks. See, people in the past, year 2013, we're supposed to be kind of lounging in all that extra time from the time-saving devices. He said, you're going to be just working 14 hours a week. You know what? Most people are working 14 hours a day. What's going on? In Europe, like I mentioned, some other countries, they're working less than America. In America, about 350 hours more per year than Europeans. Japanese, they're working so hard they eat lunch standing up. A lot of their places, there's no place to sit. You just grab food and you're off to the next thing. It's really important to take a second look at work because sometimes we use it for selfish reasons. Being busy and working all the time can look like you're doing it for other people, but underneath, some honest appraisals might reveal that it's kind of selfish. You'll notice with Martha, back in Luke 10:4, you'll notice some of the wording from Martha is a little bit selfish. Luke 10, verse 4, notice how she puts this. But Martha was distracted with all her preparations, and she came up to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the serving alone? Then tell her to help me. It was all about her. And sometimes we fool ourselves. I'm working extra hours for my family. Got to put bread on the table. And I appreciate the stress that goes with that. Got to go to work as if we have no control over it. Young people, as well as older people, missing the assembly to go to work. Not to get stuff to survive, just to get stuff. And yet we don't seem to notice that work can become kind of a get-out-of-responsibility-free card. And yet, you've probably heard it before. You ask young children or even older children, do you want more stuff or more time with your parents? And you know what the answer would be. But us older generation, we tend to think it's just a matter of making a little bit more money, make sure we got a house, and things like that. God has assigned fathers in particular to be spiritual leaders of their home. And my own dad, said something that's really stuck with me. He said, we need more fathers who come home from work so they can do their job. It's important to put bread on the table, but there's more than one way to starve to death. There's spiritual food is necessary, and that is also the father's responsibility as well. And it's easy, and later too, I'm going to just stand up here and point out the things that everybody needs to fix. And I want you to know I'm pointing at myself as well, but these things are things that we need to consider. I guess this might be good news or bad news, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you, because I have to tell myself every once in a while. It's a big illusion. You will never get caught up. You need to let go of that. You will never reach the day where everything on your list is done, you have enough money, and everything that you wanted is in place. That day will never arrive. And that might be good news. Like I say, maybe you can relax a little knowing that all your frantic efforts are not going to pull that off. And you realize that that's not what life is about. I don't know if there's bells or horns or something, but I'll pay attention. I also know that when you hear the pitter-patter of little feet, that's also a signal too. So I'll keep my ears open. But I think we got about 5 minutes. I'm going to say a couple of things and we'll start wrapping this up. If anything, we'll err a little bit by going and finishing early. You need to get some sleep. A lot of people think, sleep is an inconvenience, and somebody described we're drowsy America. We have to take things in order to get sleepy, and then we live on Red Bull and Starbucks the rest of the day, 5-hour energy, and I'm one of the worst. It's really important that we, as I mentioned before, there's several verses that talking about being alert and being ready for opportunities. Sleep, I believe there's many reasons why God designed us this way. I don't know if you thought about this. Why, if God is so intent on us using and making the most of our lives for His purpose, why would He make us unconscious for a third of it? That's a pretty important question. I think there's many answers. I'll give you one. Every night, you have to shut down and stop. And guess what? The world still keeps turning without your effort. I think sleep, one of the reasons is God saying, stop it. I'm going to switch you off for a while because it's not about you and you're not running the show. Psalm 127, verse 2. I like this verse a lot. Psalm 127, verse 2. It is vain for you to rise up early. Now, don't use this to get out of going to school or anything like that. But it is vain for you to rise up early, to retire late. In other words, get up early, stay up late. To eat the bread of painful labors, for He gives to His beloved even in His sleep. God is running things. And when we go to sleep at night, we need to have that peace of mind, that it's not going to be all your organizational skills and you're running around that's going to hold things together. He is the one who maintains. I find it very interesting, just in passing, in Psalm 23:2, very famous part of the Bible, it says, He makes me lie down in green pastures. It's not like He lets me. He has to force us sometimes to calm down. Here's the last couple of closing thoughts, and we'll wrap this up. If you ever want to know the meaning of life, you can find it in Ephesians 1, 3, and 4. It's not that hard to find. You don't have to climb a mountain and ask a guy in a robe to tell you the meaning of life. It's in Ephesians 1, 3, and 4, and it talks about that someday you will stand before God, and you better be holy, which means set apart, and blameless, which means perfect. And the only way you can do that is through Jesus. That's why you're here. All the rest, as Paul describes in Philippians 3, is garbage. So the basic question is, what is life for? And it's very frightening to consider the real possibility that our technology is causing us to skim the surface of life and to forget why we're here. You may, like a lot of us, think that coming to church, everything's fine. That's just the surface. There's got to be more. Tomorrow you've got to walk out of these doors and carry this into real life, or it's not real at all. You're just playing games. So all of us maybe, I would really challenge us to kind of take a step back. Maybe that's something we can do. We'll talk a little bit more during the lesson this morning and then this afternoon. And I want you to know, it's pretty easy for some guy to show up and just point at stuff and say, well, that's wrong and this is wrong and everybody needs to change this. My goal is this afternoon at 1, during the last session, we're going to talk about some possible solutions. And I'll be very eager to hear some suggestions you have. But I wish you the best. I know some of you, this will wear off pretty quick. You're probably nodding your head, that's a good idea, I need to change that, but then the world's going to grab you again and drown you in all the whistles and bells. But I know some of you might remember this tomorrow and make a real effort, and I wish you the best, and I hope that it turns out well, that life upgrades. I appreciate your attention, and we'll be dismissed at this point. Thank you.